Get ready for lesson 10. It's a doozy. Pleasure poisons people. Let this represent all the material things of this life. Your gold, your silver, they're all corroded, and the rust of them will be a witness against you and will eat your flesh like it's on fire. So I'm holding in my hand a little 1-inch square piece of bark from a pine tree. Compared to the sun, this is nothing. And yet if I hold it up between me and the sun, which is currently shining brilliantly in the sky, I can literally look directly at the sun and not see it. Let this represent all the material things of this life. Let this represent all of the wealth and the pleasures that we can accumulate in this life, the affluence in our culture. And let the sun represent God. In James chapter 5, verse 1 through 6, James teaches a lesson that I've entitled, Pleasure Poisons People. You would think that the more resources we get as individuals, the more affluent and wealthy we become, the more generous we would be. But James says, no, it's actually right the opposite. The wealthier we get, the less we care about those who have less than us. He's pretty harsh. Get ready for lesson 10. It's a doozy. James chapter 5, verse 1 through 6. Again, I'm doing a lot of interpreting as I go through, not just reading it straight. James says, look, if you are rich, and he doesn't differentiate between good rich people and bad rich people. He just says, if you're rich. He says, if you're rich, weep and howl for your miseries that will come on you. He doesn't say they might come. He says they will come. He says your riches are rotten. Your garments are moth eaten. That nice wardrobe you've got with all those cool clothes. He says your gold, your silver, they're all corroded. And the rust of them will be a witness against you and will eat your flesh like it's on fire. Think of it this way. We're all going to stand before God. We're going to answer for the life we have lived on this earth. If someone doesn't have resources and they're confronted with the problems and pains of other people, then perhaps that person could say, well, man, I wanted to do something, but I simply couldn't. But the wealthier you are, the more responsible you are. The Bible says, to whom much is given, much is required. And he says, the wealth that you have is just rusting away because it's all temporary. The material things of this life, it doesn't last. And he says, and it's eating your flesh like your flesh is already on fire. You put all this confidence in your wealth. And I will hide from the view of God, from behind my little checkbook here, from behind my resources and my toys. And James says, no, it's going to destroy you. It's going to be a witness against you in the day of judgment. He says, you've piled up a whole lot of evidence together for the last days. He gives them, in this case, his specific audience, he gives them a very specific illustration from their day-to-day life on how they've gone astray with their love of money. He says, look at the paychecks of the workers that you have who have harvested your fields. You've kept back those wages by fraud. In other words, you owe people money who have less money than you have. And he said, you have no right to do that. The commandment under Moses' law and under Christ's instruction was, you pay the guy who doesn't have much. You pay him the day he earns the money because he's depending on it for his supper. He says, you've kept back those wages and you've done it by fraud. And he says, those wages that sit in your bank account, they're crying out against you. And the cries of them who have done your work are entered into the ears of the Lord of armies. If you think of Cain and Abel and the story of Cain killing Abel, and God came to Cain and said, the blood of your brother is crying out from the ground. Justice must be served. It's the same principle here. God hears the cries of those who are hurting as a result of our love, my love for my wealth. He says, you've lived in luxury and have been unrestrained. You have made your hearts fat. That's not a compliment. Like in the day of slaughter. You're living every day. If you know the story of the rich man and Lazarus, the Bible says the rich man fared sumptuously every day. He was living a very extravagant, self-involved life while this homeless man was starving outside his gate. And he said, you've lived every day like that, and you have condemned and killed innocent people, and they don't even resist you. And here you hide comfortably behind your paycheck, behind your salary, behind your home, behind your cars, behind your hobbies and your toys, behind your technology and your comfortable little life. And you hide under this shadow of these material things saying, I'm just fine. And the sun, not the S-U-N, but the S-O-N, is still up there, just as great, just as mighty, just as much in power as he ever has been, and he always will remain. One of these days, this will be completely gone. It'll turn back to dust, and the sun will still be shining. You know, we read in the scriptures that we are supposed to set our affections on things above, not on the things of this world. As we're making this recording today, and I don't know when you'll be watching it, but this COVID-19, this coronavirus thing has just gone berserk, and our economy may be the thing that's being hit the worst by it, even more than our health. But you know what I'm reminded? Everything in this life is fleeting. Everything that we put our faith and trust in when it comes to the material world, it can evaporate just like that. Our lives are so fragile. But you know what's not fragile? A relationship with Jesus Christ, and serving him and serving others because we love him. That's investing in eternity. Jesus said, don't lay up treasures on this earth where moths can eat your fine clothes and your fine metallic things can rust and thieves can come in and break and steal your stuff. He said, lay up treasures in heaven. How about it, friend? Where's your heart? What matters most to you? Pleasure poisons people. It distorts our perspective and we lose sight of what really matters.